I still hear the screams sometimes, distant, like echoes caught in the trees. It's been over a year since I left, but the memories cling like the morning fog that never lifted from that cursed forest. It started with a job offer. Simple, quiet, ideal for someone like me, who needed a reset. I'd been through some rough patches and thought a few months working at Pine Barrens National Park would help me clear my head. Fresh air, long hikes, no distractions. That's what I thought. The park was vast, beautiful even, stretching over endless acres of dense forest, crisscrossed by hiking trails and campgrounds. But it didn't take long for me to notice the strange undercurrent in the way the rangers operated. They were all careful. Too careful. There were 6 full-time rangers and 2 volunteers. Most were older men who rarely smiled. One woman, Ranger Hicks, was the youngest but the most distant. They had a tight routine. Every night at 9 p.m. sharp, they would head out, never deviating, always moving in pairs, and always in the same direction, east. When I asked what was out there, they shrugged. Just routine checks, they said. Nothing to worry about. But I saw the way their hands trembled slightly before they left, how they checked and rechecked their gear. Something about it felt rehearsed, fearful. A week into my job, I began helping out with patrols, standard procedure. I always ended up on west or southern routes, never east. No one ever invited me. Curiosity got the better of me. One night, I stayed late under the pretense of doing inventory. As the sun dipped behind the hills and the woods turned dark, I watched from the ranger station as Hicks and Ranger Monroe loaded up their rifles and disappeared into the woods. I waited 15 minutes. Then I followed. I knew I could lose my job for this, but I had to know what was out there. I moved slow, staying far enough behind that my flashlight wouldn't catch them. The trees were dense, the ground soft and mossy. Every crackle underfoot made my heart race. And then, I heard it. A low hum. Not from any animal I recognized. It was rhythmic, almost like chanting, but distorted, like it was underwater. The air felt wrong, thick with static. I ducked behind a tree and peeked out. They were standing in a clearing I'd never seen on any of the park's maps. Monroe was pouring something into a pit. Hicks stood rigid, whispering something. I couldn't make out the words. Then something in the pit moved. Not fast, slow, like something waking up. My stomach turned. I tried to step back, but my foot snapped a branch. They stopped. Monroe turned his head slightly, like he heard it, but didn't see me. I didn't wait. I turned and started back, running blindly through the trees, branches slapping my face. I didn't stop until I saw the flickering light of the ranger station. I slammed the door shut behind me, heart pounding. Nobody followed, but the next morning, Monroe approached me at breakfast. He stared for a while, then said, "Curiosity is dangerous out here." And just like that, he walked away. That was the moment I knew. Something was wrong in those woods, and the rangers weren't just hiding it. They were feeding it. The rest of the day passed in a fog. I couldn't concentrate on anything. Every creak of the station, every gust of wind against the glass windows made my skin crawl. I wanted to believe I imagined it. The chanting, the thing in the pit. But the fear in Monroe's eyes as he turned in that clearing, that was real. That evening, I debated reporting what I saw. But to who? The rangers were the law out here. I couldn't exactly call 911 and say, "Hey, the forest rangers are feeding something in a dirt pit in the woods." I didn't even know what I saw. Still, I couldn't leave it alone. I started researching. Late nights, digging through old newspaper archives online, local legends, anything. Pine Barrens had its share of ghost stories, disappearances, strange lights, cryptid sightings, but nothing concrete. It was like the place swallowed the truth whole. 3 days after the incident, I found an old trail map tucked into a drawer in the maintenance shed. It was yellowed and brittle, probably from the 70s. But one thing caught my attention: a trail marker leading east, past where any current trails ended, labeled only as Point Echo. I asked Hicks about it casually. She went cold. "Map's outdated," she said. "Forget you saw it." That night, I dreamed of the clearing. Only this time, I was in the pit. I couldn't move. The trees leaned in, whispering in a language I didn't understand. Something heavy and ancient stirred beneath me. I woke up soaked in sweat. The next day, I asked Monroe directly. He looked me in the eye and said, "You're not ready for the truth." None of us were. Then he walked off like he hadn't just said something out of a horror movie. I knew I had to go back. I couldn't explain it. It was like the forest was pulling me, like something wanted me to return. I waited until another patrol night. Hicks and Monroe again. I packed light, water, flashlight, a pocket knife, and the old map. This time, I left before they did. I followed the map, taking a different path through the trees, avoiding their regular route. The forest was quieter than usual. No birds, no crickets, just the crunch of my boots on dead leaves and the thud of my heart in my chest. I reached the clearing after an hour of hiking. The pit was still there, and now I could see the symbols carved into the ground around it, circles and jagged lines, filled with ash and bones. I stepped closer, drawn like a moth to flame. That hum started again, low, pulsing. My flashlight flickered. Then I saw it. A hand. Not human. Elongated, pale, almost translucent. It gripped the edge of the pit, like it was pulling itself up. I ran. I didn't stop until I collapsed behind the maintenance shed, panting, my lungs on fire. That was the second time I saw it, and it wouldn't be the last. I couldn't stop thinking about that hand. The way it moved, slow and deliberate, as if it had all the time in the world. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was obsession. I had to know what the Rangers were hiding, and more importantly, what they were feeding. A few nights later, I went back. This time, I came prepared. I carried a thermal camera, a small audio recorder, and extra batteries. I didn't tell anyone. I knew if I did, they'd stop me. Or worse. I waited until Hicks and Monroe left on their usual patrol. Then I slipped out the back, moving carefully along the old trail, my steps memorized from the last visit. This time, though, I didn't go straight to the clearing. I wanted to see where they came from. I found a high ridge that overlooked the area. I lay flat, covered myself in brush, and waited. They arrived after 30 minutes, just like before. But this time, they weren't alone. There was a third person. Shorter, older, bundled in heavy winter clothes despite the mild weather. They didn't speak. Not that I could hear, but the body language was tense. The older person stood at the edge of the pit, looking down, trembling. That's when I saw it again, the hand. It rose up slowly, followed by part of a face. Pale, featureless, eyes like polished obsidian. The air around it shimmered like heat off pavement. The older person didn't scream. They didn't run. They just stepped forward and let themselves fall in. No struggle. No noise. Just silence. The creature receded into the pit, like it was satisfied. The Rangers didn't react. Hicks pulled out a small book and wrote something. Monroe poured what looked like blood from a metal flask into the dirt. Then they left. I couldn't breathe. My mind refused to process what I just witnessed. A sacrifice. That's what it was. Not a ritual. Not protection. A willing offering. As they disappeared into the trees, I crept down from my perch and approached the pit. I kept my distance. There was no movement, no sign of the creature, just a faint, rotten smell and that unnatural silence. I snapped a few photos, switched on my audio recorder, and whispered everything I saw. My hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the camera. Then, from behind me, a twig snapped. I spun around, flashlight in hand. Nothing, but I felt it. That presence. Watching, waiting. I backed away slowly, never turning my back to the pit. I didn't run this time. I walked, slow and steady, all the way back to the ranger station. When I got there, the lights were off. It was too quiet. I crept inside, heart pounding. Hicks was waiting. She sat at the table, staring at an old lantern. The flame flickered. "You went back," she said, not looking at me. I didn't deny it. "What did you see?" she asked. "I saw someone die." She nodded. "No, you saw someone chosen." She finally looked up. Her eyes weren't angry. They were tired. "There are rules here," she said. "Old ones. We don't protect the forest. We protect everything else from what's beneath it." I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the forest whisper through the open window. And somewhere in the distance, that hum started again. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I made coffee, chatted with the seasonal staff, even helped clean out one of the storage cabins. But every moment, every second, I felt that thing watching me. When Monroe saw me later, he didn't say a word. He just gave me a long, searching look, like he was trying to decide if I'd make it through the week. I reviewed the audio I recorded. Static. Only static. Except for the last few seconds, where a whisper bled through. I played it over and over again. A single phrase in a voice I didn't recognize. "He sees you now." It wasn't Monroe's voice. Or Hicks. It wasn't human. That night, I locked my cabin door. Double-bolted it. I even pushed my dresser against it. I told myself I was being paranoid. But around midnight, I heard something dragging across the floorboards outside. Slow. Deliberate. I didn't look. I couldn't. The next morning, there were no marks. No signs anyone, or anything, had been there. But I knew. I could feel it in my bones. I went to Hicks. I was done pretending. "I need to know," I said. "All of it." She studied me, then nodded slowly. "There's a book," she said, "in the archives. Basement of the North Tower. You'll need Monroe's key." Getting Monroe's key wasn't hard. He left it on his bunk when he showered. I don't think he expected me to go through with it. The North Tower hadn't been used in years. Dust and cobwebs coated everything. The basement was colder than it should have been. The kind of cold that crept into your teeth. I found the book in a locked drawer. A leather-bound journal, brittle with age. No title. Inside were entries dating back to 1893. All written by rangers. All about the Woken One. Each entry described sacrifices, rituals, rules. It fed once a season during the new moon. The rangers were chosen to serve, to prevent the thing from waking fully. But if it ever did, I didn't finish reading. I couldn't. My hands were trembling too hard. The last page was signed by someone named Elias Monroe, dated just 6 months before I arrived. I returned the book and relocked the drawer. On my way out, I noticed a scratch on the wall, just beside the stairs. Deep. Recent. For words, he's not asleep. When I turned around, the door I'd entered through had shut. And I swear, just before the light flickered out, I heard the whisper again. "He sees you now." The fear didn't go away after that night. it got worse. It clung to me, heavy like a silk blanket. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face again. Pale, watching, waiting. I started noticing small things, subtle shifts in the environment. Trees where there hadn't been trees. Paths that curved differently than the day before. The compass on my watch spun like it was drunk. Animals avoided the station entirely. Even birds stopped flying over the forest. Then there were the whispers. At first, I thought it was the wind. But wind doesn't call your name. Wind doesn't speak in broken, rasping syllables that echo through your skull long after they've stopped. One night, while checking equipment near the storage barn, I found a note tucked under the latch. Leave now, before the new moon. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was shaky, rushed. Someone was trying to warn me. I showed Hicks. She read it, folded it neatly, and burned it in the wood stove. There's nowhere to go, she said. Not anymore. That's when I realized no one left this place. Rangers retired, sure, but they didn't leave. They disappeared. They became names on plaques and entries in logs. Nothing more. I went looking for answers again, this time deeper into the Ranger archives. Most of it was mundane. Trail reports, weather logs, maintenance schedules. But tucked between a stack of moldy maps, I found a photo. It showed a group of Rangers, maybe from the 60s, standing around what looked like a freshly dug pit. Their faces were grim, hollow. In the background, a shape, tall, skeletal, blurred by motion, stood between the trees. I took the photo to Monroe. He stared at it for a long time. You know what that is? I asked. He nodded. That's what happens when it wakes up. That's what we're trying to stop. I couldn't take it anymore. I told him everything, about following them, about the sacrifices, the journal, the voices. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said, "Then you already know too much," and walked away. Later that night, I found scratches on the inside of my cabin door. Not outside, inside, like something had been trying to get out. I packed a bag. I planned to leave the next morning, hike out before dawn, make it to the nearest town. But when I woke up, my boots were gone. So was my map. There was a note on my pillow. You were chosen. The whispers came louder that night, not from the forest, but from inside my own head, repeating the same phrase. Feed the roots. Feed the roots. Feed the roots. I didn't sleep again. The whispering grew louder with every hour, seeping into my thoughts. It didn't feel like paranoia anymore. It felt like invasion, like something had cracked open the doors in my mind and was making itself at home. In a last-ditch effort, I reached out to Marcy, the oldest ranger still living in town nearby. She'd retired over a decade ago, and no one at the station talked about her. I found her phone number buried in an old emergency contact sheet. She answered after 2 rings. Her voice was weak, like it hadn't been used in years. "Who told you about me?" she asked immediately. "No one," I said. "I just need to know what's going on in these woods." Silence. Then she whispered, "The roots are older than the forest." What does that mean? They fed it before the park was built, before the state took the land. It was always there, waiting. We didn't create it. We just inherited the duty to keep it satisfied. I asked why no one had stopped it. You don't stop the rain. You build a roof. That's what we've done. A ritual every season keeps it sleeping. But someone always has to be the offering. Her voice cracked. They made me choose once. My partner or me. I chose myself. It didn't let me. Took him anyway. Said I wasn't ready. Then she hung up. I sat on the floor, the phone buzzing in my hand. cold sweat clinging to my skin. The room swayed around me. I was losing grip on what was real. The next day, Monroe approached me again. He looked different, resigned, like a man walking toward his own execution. "There's a clearing," he said. "West side, before the river bend. Go there. You'll find what you're looking for." I followed his instructions that afternoon. The clearing was small, ringed with moss-covered stones. At its center was an old stump, blackened and cracked. I brushed away the dirt at its base and found a hidden hatch, like the one I saw before, but smaller. Inside was another journal. This one belonged to Hicks. She wrote about her first encounter with the thing, about her father, a ranger before her, and how he disappeared the night she turned 18. She was forced to take his place to keep the pact. Her last entry read, "It's waking up too soon. The offerings aren't enough anymore. It wants something bigger." When I looked up, I saw footprints, fresh ones, leading back toward the ranger station. I wasn't alone out there. The whispers started again, now with a different tone, expectation. It wasn't warning me anymore. It was summoning me. I rushed back toward the station, but every path looked wrong. The trees had shifted again, forming new shapes, unfamiliar corridors. It was like the forest itself was trying to keep me there. When I finally broke through the last line of trees, I was bleeding from scratches and thorns. The ranger station stood quiet, too quiet. On the steps was Monroe. He looked at me like he'd been expecting this exact moment. "It chose you," he said. "You need to decide one life or everyone." Behind him, the door creaked open slowly. I heard the hum, and the roots answered. The door creaked wider as Monroe stepped aside, letting me enter first. I hesitated, every cell in my body screaming at me to run, but I didn't. Something stronger than fear pulled me forward. Inside, the station was dark. The only light came from a lantern on the table, casting long shadows across the floor. Hicks stood beside it, holding something wrapped in cloth. "We don't have much time," she said, unwrapping it. It was a key, ancient looking, rusted, shaped like a tree root. "You need to see it," she said. "Then you'll understand." I didn't ask questions. I just followed them. Hicks led the way this time, guiding me down an old maintenance trail I never knew existed. It twisted deep into the forest, far past any marked zones. The trees grew closer together, their trunks twisted, almost like they were reaching for each other. We reached a stone slab embedded in the forest floor, covered in moss. Hicks cleared it off and revealed a circular metal hatch beneath. The key fit perfectly. As the hatch creaked open, a rush of cold air hit me. The stench of rot and wet earth was overwhelming. A staircase descended into darkness. Hicks handed me a flashlight, her face pale. "If you're going to be chosen, you have to know what you're becoming." I climbed down, each step echoing hollowly. The air grew heavier the deeper I went. At the bottom was a tunnel, ancient and damp, its walls lined with carvings, strange symbols, twisted faces, depictions of people kneeling before something massive and formless. The tunnel opened into a chamber. In the center was a pit, deeper than the one above ground. Around it were relics, bones, rotting wood, dried blood. It was a shrine. No, not a shrine, an altar. And then I saw it. Not the creature. Not yet. But the wall behind the altar, it pulsed. Not metaphorically. It actually moved, like a giant heartbeat. Embedded in her faces, human faces stretched and distorted, mouths agape in silent screams. Hicks stepped beside me, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is its root. One of many. Each park holds a different limb. They're all connected underground. I turned to her, horrified. There are more of these? She nodded. 7 across the country, all tied to something beneath us, something old, something forgotten. We don't worship it. We contain it. Monroe added, but it's waking faster than we can control. I backed away, my hands trembling. How do you stop it? You don't, Hicks said. You feed it enough to keep it asleep. That's all we can do. I looked again at the pulsing wall. The faces blinked. One of them looked like the man from the sacrifice. I dropped the flashlight, and the chamber filled with a hum. The hum wasn't just sound, it was sensation. It vibrated in my bones, my teeth, the very air. I stumbled back, barely able to stand. Hicks didn't move. She watched me, eyes calm, like she'd done this before. Monroe lit an old oil lantern and placed it on the altar. This is where we swear the oath, he said. This is where we accept the burden. I didn't respond. My mind raced. Faces in the wall blinked in and out like images on an old film reel. One mouth moved. I swear it whispered my name. I forced myself to look away and focused on the carvings along the chamber walls. They told a story, primitive, symbolic. Men and women kneeling before an immense shape, crowned in antlers and rooted in the earth. Then darkness, fire, death, then kneeling again. A cycle. Monroe caught my gaze. It punishes disobedience. Every time a site failed to deliver, towns vanished. Entire communities erased. No one remembers because that's part of the design. I wanted to scream. This wasn't right. It wasn't fair. You're telling me we've just been feeding people to this thing for centuries? Hicks nodded slowly. Because if we don't, it wakes. And when it wakes, it doesn't stop at one town. It keeps going. I turned toward the tunnel, needing to escape. But something moved in the corner of my vision. From the edge of the altar, a root curled upward, black and slick, dragging across the stone floor toward me. Monroe stepped between it and me. It's testing you. You've seen too much. Now it's deciding. Deciding what? If you're worth keeping alive. I should have run. I should have never taken this job. But somehow, despite the horror, a small part of me understood. They weren't protecting the secret. They were protecting the world from it. I looked again at the wall. This time, the face that blinked open, it was mine. I collapsed. Hicks grabbed me by the shoulders, shaking me. Listen to me, she said. If you fight it, you'll die. If you accept it, you'll change. But you'll survive. I didn't sign up for this, I whispered. No one ever does. Then she held out a blade, old ceremonial, its edge lined with strange runes. You have to choose. Monroe added. You bleed for it, or you become one of us. I stared at the blade, at the pulsing wall, at my own reflected face blinking from the roots. And I realized there was no leaving anymore. Only transformation. I took the blade in shaking hands. It felt warm, pulsing like it had a heartbeat of its own. My breath was ragged, my thoughts a blur of memories, panic, and static hums. I pressed the edge against my palm and watched the blood drip onto the altar. It sizzled when it touched the stone. The hum stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then the wall absorbed the blood. My face disappeared from its surface. The other faces quieted. Monroe placed a hand on my shoulder. You made the first step. Hicks whispered. Now you serve. I didn't respond. But deep down, I knew they were right. The forest had taken me, and I wasn't getting out. I didn't leave the underground chamber for what felt like hours, maybe days. Time didn't work the same down there. I couldn't tell if it was the oppressive silence, the stale air, or the low thrumming that seemed to sync with my heartbeat. But everything felt wrong. When I finally emerged, the forest looked different. The sun was lower, or maybe it hadn't risen at all. The trees leaned in more aggressively now, and the wind carried whispers I didn't understand. Monroe and Hicks didn't follow me back. I was alone. I tried to get back to my cabin, but the trail was gone. I wandered for what felt like hours, and just when I was sure I'd be lost forever, I saw something. An old ranger station. Not the one I knew. This one was older, weather-beaten, broken windows, half swallowed by ivy and moss. I stepped inside. Dust choked the air. Broken furniture and moldy papers littered the floor. But something about it felt familiar. On the desk was a photo. Me, with Monroe and Hicks. But I had no memory of it ever being taken. Behind me, a voice said, "Welcome back." I turned, but no one was there. The whispering returned, louder now. Insistent, like dozens of voices speaking all at once. They weren't angry. They were expectant, drawn by instinct or maybe compulsion. I returned to the altar chamber the next night. This time, I went deeper. There was a second tunnel I hadn't noticed before, hidden behind a curtain of roots. I pulled them aside and entered. This tunnel was narrower, claustrophobic. The walls dripped with moisture. Strange fungal growths pulsed faintly, lighting the way. At the end was a chamber filled with cages, old, rusted, empty except for bones. That's when I realized this place wasn't just for worship. It was for containment, and something had gotten out. One cage door was broken, twisted open from the inside. Scratch marks covered the walls. Deep, furious. Blood stained the floor. Old blood. New blood. Then I heard breathing. Slow. Wet. From behind me. I turned slowly, flashlight shaking. There it was. Not fully visible, but I saw enough. Limbs too long. Skin too pale. Mouths. Yes, mouths, plural. Opening and closing along its neck and chest. It didn't lunge. It didn't chase. It watched. Then it spoke. Dozens of voices in one. "You are one of us." I ran. I didn't look back. I could feel it behind me, following. Not chasing, just watching. I didn't stop until I reached the surface again. But nothing felt real anymore. Not the sky. Not the trees. Not even me. When I got back to the ranger station, my ranger station, it wasn't empty. Monroe was there, sitting in the dark, sharpening a knife. "You saw it," he said, without turning. I nodded slowly, trying to catch my breath. "You weren't supposed to go that deep," he murmured. "But it's good that you did." "Why?" I asked. "What is that thing?" He finally looked at me. "That's the root mind. The first branch. It remembers everything. Everyone. It decides who gets taken and who gets changed." I saw cages. Bones. How many people? "Too many," he interrupted. "Some were sacrifices. Some were experiments. When it's hungry, it wants answers. When it's full, it dreams. You saw it between meals." The weight of his words crushed me. I sat down, my legs trembling. Monroe continued. "We don't just feed it blood. We feed it identity. That's what it takes. Names, memories, faces. That's why people vanish from history when they're chosen. It consumes who they were." I thought about the photo I saw, me with him, an event I had no memory of, a version of me that was already slipping away. What happens to me now? I asked. You keep walking the path, or you fight it and vanish, but you can't go back. You've seen too much. You're marked. Marked. He pulled up his sleeve. A black, branching scar ran from his wrist to his elbow. It pulsed faintly under the skin. You have one too. You just haven't looked yet. I stumbled to the bathroom, turned on the light, rolled up my sleeve. There it was. The same pattern, spreading. I screamed. The next days, or hours, I'm not sure which, blurred together. The forest changed again. The station flickered between what it was and what it might have been. Sometimes I woke up in the old version, sometimes in the new. Time looped strangely. Events repeated out of order. Faces came and went like flickering images. The forest wasn't a place anymore. It was a mind, and I was inside it. Hicks found me one morning by the river, soaked barefoot, mumbling to myself. She knelt beside me and whispered, "You're almost through the threshold. Just a little further." I didn't understand, but I followed her back. That night, they took me to the altar again. This time, not to witness, to accept. They drew symbols on my chest, lit candles made of ash and bone. The hum returned, not oppressive now, but welcoming. In the center of the altar, the pit glowed, and from it a voice. "Do you accept the memory of the forest?" I didn't speak. I just nodded, and the light consumed me. When I woke, it was morning. Normal. Birds chirping. Sunlight through the trees. For a moment, I thought it had all been a dream. But then I saw the scar again, thicker now, reaching my collarbone. And I remembered. Monroe and Hicks were gone. The station was silent. But on the table, a new journal waited. Blank, except for the first line written in thick ink. Your turn to remember. That's what I do now. I patrol. I watch. I write. And every month, when the new moon rises, I stand at the edge of the pit. I listen. I whisper. And I feed the roots. Because if I don't, it will wake. And next time, it won't stop. Time passes differently now. I don't know how long it's been since I took the oath. Days, weeks, months. The forest doesn't keep time the way the rest of the world does. But something's changed. I'm changing. The scar is now a network, stretching down my ribs and around my back, like vines burrowing under the skin. And with it, new memories have surfaced, memories that aren't mine. I dream in whispers. I see through trees. I feel the earth breathe beneath my feet. But part of me, what little's left, still wants to run. I tried once. Packed a bag in the middle of the night. Walked west until my legs gave out. Made it to the edge of the park. There was a road. A truck stopped. A man stepped out. He looked at me. Really looked. Then said, "You're one of them now." His eyes turned black. And the forest took me back. I woke up at the altar. No one said a word. They didn't have to. That was the last time I tried to leave. Monroe is gone. Hicks too. The forest took them. Or maybe they became part of it. I don't know. I'm the last ranger now. And every day, I hear the roots growing louder. The sacrifices have stopped. No one's come to the forest in weeks. It's almost like it's isolating itself, cutting ties to the outside world, preparing for something. The last entry in Hicks' journal warned of this. When the forest stops feeding, it's not satisfied. It's preparing to consume. I tried sending messages, emails, reports. None of them go through. No one answers. The phone rings, but when I pick up, it's only the hum. Last night, I found something buried near the river, a mirror. Old, cracked. I looked into it, and the reflection wasn't me. It was the forest, wearing my skin. I screamed, but no sound came out. Now I understand what Hicks meant. I haven't just inherited this job. I've inherited the forest itself. It's no longer a place I live in. It's something I am. I'm writing this now because someone will come eventually. Someone always does. Maybe a hiker. Maybe a curious blogger. Maybe you. When you find this journal, don't stay. Don't ask questions. Don't follow the whispers. Because the forest doesn't want to be discovered. It wants to be remembered. And if it remembers you, it will never let you go. You think you can survive it. That you're different. That your mind is stronger. I thought the same. But the forest doesn't break you with pain. It breaks you with memory. With familiarity. It makes you forget where you end and it begins. Every path I walk now is one I've walked before. Every tree knows my name. Sometimes they whisper it with the wind. Other times with creaks and groans of their branches. But the worst part? Sometimes I see myself. In other uniforms. Older. Younger. Watching from behind trees. Smiling. Crying. Screaming. Like echoes left behind by every version of me that came before. There's a clearing near the northern ridge, overgrown and hidden. Last week, I found gravestones there, each one carved with initials and dates, all of them recent, none of which I recognized, except one. It bore my name, my birth year, and a death date 3 days from now. I tried to dig it up, to prove it was fake, just some sick trick from the forest. But halfway through, the earth started bleeding. I ran. The next day, the grave was gone, but the marker remained. And now the dreams have changed. No more whispers. Now it's a voice. Clear. Direct. Prepare. I don't know what's coming, but I feel it. Like pressure building deep underground. A shift in the soil. The animals are gone. The sky turns red at sunset, then black before the stars can even appear. The forest is holding its breath, waiting, and I think I finally understand what it wants. It doesn't want caretakers anymore. It wants vessels. It wants bodies. It wants me. But here's the thing. It doesn't just grow through fear. It grows through stories. Through the retelling, through memory. That's why I'm leaving this journal. That's why you're reading it. Because even if you never step foot here, if you imagine it, if you believe it, you've already started feeding it. So if you're still here, if you're still reading, I'm sorry. You're part of it now. The roots are already moving beneath your feet. Listen closely. Do you hear the hum? That's not your house creaking. That's not wind in the trees. That's the forest remembering your name. And it's coming for you. So turn off the lights. Close your windows. Forget this story. Because if you don't, you'll hear it whisper too. Welcome home. The funny thing is, I used to think stories like this were made up. Reddit threads. Creepypastas. Just bored people spinning yarns in the dark. But every story has roots, doesn't it? Just like the forest. It plants itself in your imagination. It waits. And then, when you're vulnerable, when you're alone and tired and half awake, it begins to grow. Quietly. Silently. Until one day, you look in the mirror and realize your eyes are just a little darker. That the trees outside your window don't look quite right. That you can't remember your last dream, but you wake up with soil under your fingernails. That's when it's too late. So take my final word seriously. Don't search for Pine Barrens National Park. Don't follow coordinates you find in forums. Don't look for missing rangers. And most of all, don't listen to the hum. Because if you do, if you even try, you'll feel the branches reaching through your walls. And when they find you, you'll understand what I did. There's no escape, only inheritance. And the forest never forgets. It only waits.